My father looked me dead in the eye, handed me a heavy silver serving tray, and hissed, "Don't ruin this for us." I was his biological daughter, but tonight I was just the unpaid help. I nodded, swallowing my pride. But then the guest of honor arrived, and she completely froze in the doorway. To understand how I ended up standing in my own childhood home wearing a literal maid's apron, you have to understand the man my father, Tobias, truly is. To the outside world, Tobias is a pillar of the community. He's a charismatic executive, a man who wears custom-tailored Italian suits, donates visibly to the right local charities, and always remembers to ask his colleagues about their golf handicaps. But behind the heavy oak doors of our suburban Chicago home, he is a man entirely obsessed with image control and climbing the corporate ladder no matter whose fingers he has to step on to get there. The first person he stepped on was my mother, Valerie. My parents built a life together from nothing. My mom worked double shifts as a high school English teacher to put my dad through his MBA. She was the one who edited his resumes, the one who cooked cheap pasta dinners while they saved for a mortgage, and the one who held his hand when he faced rejection after rejection. But the moment Tobias landed a lucrative management position at a top-tier logistics firm, he decided my mother no longer fit his executive aesthetic. I was 14 when he left us. He didn't just leave, he scorched the earth. He hired cutthroat lawyers, hid assets, and left my mother financially devastated. Less than a year later, he married Caroline. Caroline was his former assistant, 10 years younger than him, with a taste for designer labels and a profound allergy to actual work. Soon after, they had a daughter together, Harper. My mother passed away from breast cancer when I was 19. In her final months, she made me promise to finish my college degree no matter what. But when she died, the crushing medical debt wiped out the small life insurance policy she had managed to keep. I was a broke sophomore in college with nowhere to go. Legally, I was an adult, but practically, I was an orphan. With immense reluctance, Tobias allowed me to move into the unfinished basement of his sprawling 5-bedroom mini mansion, but it came with conditions. I wasn't a daughter returning home. I was a tenant paying my way through servitude. I had to maintain a full-time course load, work a part-time job to pay for my own tuition, and in exchange for free rent, I became the household's unpaid domestic staff. For 4 years, I was the ghost in that house. I did the laundry, scrubbing Caroline's silk blouses by hand. I deep-cleaned the bathrooms. I cooked dinner every single night. If I was studying for a final exam and the dishes weren't done by 9 p.m., Tobias would march down to the basement, throw my textbooks to the floor, and remind me of his favorite phrase. In the real world, Natalie, nobody cares about your excuses. You pull your weight, or you get out. Meanwhile, Harper grew up as the golden child. While I was wearing thrift store jeans and calculating whether I could afford a coffee on campus, Harper, at 19, was driving a brand new Mercedes that Tobias bought her for graduating high school with a C average. Harper never lifted a finger. She treated me less like a half-sister and more like an annoying roommate she occasionally ordered around. The tipping point arrived in early November. Tobias's company had just undergone a massive merger with a global conglomerate based in London. The restructuring meant that a highly coveted position, President of North American Operations, was suddenly up for grabs. Tobias wanted it so badly I could practically smell the desperation on him. It came with a mid-7-figure salary, stock options, and the kind of prestige he craved like oxygen. The decision rested entirely in the hands of the new global VP of Operations, a brilliant and notoriously uncompromising British executive who was doing a tour of the American branches. To secure the promotion, Tobias decided he needed to pull out all the stops. He invited the VP, along with 3 other senior executives, to our home for an intimate, authentic American family dinner. "This isn't just a dinner, Caroline," I overheard him say in the kitchen one evening, swirling his scotch. "This woman is old money European. She values tradition, stability, and domestic harmony. She wants to know the men she promotes have a solid foundation. We need to look like the absolute picture of the perfect, thriving family." Caroline, buffing her nails, scoffed. "Then I'll call the country club and have them cater." "I'm not cooking for 20 people, Tobias." "No caterers," Tobias snapped. That looks sterile. It looks like we're trying too hard to impress her with money. It needs to look effortless. It needs to look like you prepared a gourmet, home-cooked meal while managing a flawless household." Caroline paused, her eyes slowly dragging over to where I was standing at the sink, quietly washing a pan. A slow, cruel smile spread across her face. "You're right, darling," Caroline purred. "It should be home-cooked, and I know exactly how we're going to pull it off." The moment Caroline's eyes landed on me, I knew my week was going to be a living hell, but I had no idea just how humiliating it would get. The dinner was scheduled for a Friday night. By Tuesday, Caroline had handed me a meticulously detailed 5-course menu. It was absurdly complex. A Gruyere and caramelized onion tartlet appetizer, a roasted butternut squash soup, a classic beef Wellington for the main course, and a delicate raspberry millefeuille for dessert. It was the kind of menu that required 2 solid days of prep work. "I have classes all day Thursday, Caroline," I protested, looking at the multi-page shopping list she shoved into my hands. "I have a midterm essay due on Friday morning. I can't be in the kitchen for 24 hours straight." Tobias, who had just walked into the room adjusting his tie, didn't even look at me. "Then you'll stay up all night Wednesday, Natalie. You live under my roof. You eat my food. This promotion means everything to this family. You are going to make sure this dinner is flawless, and Caroline is going to be the gracious hostess. Do you understand?" "But I said," Tobias interrupted, his voice dropping to that dangerous, icy register that used to make my mother flinch. "Do you understand?" I swallowed the lump of rage in my throat. I only had 6 months left until graduation. 6 months until I got my degree, packed my bags, and never looked at these people again. "Yes," I muttered. For the next 3 days, I barely slept. I was a machine, balancing my senior-level college coursework with the demands of a Michelin star kitchen prep. I went to the butcher, the specialty cheese shop, and the bakery. I julienned vegetables until my fingers cramped. I perfected the pastry dough for the Wellington, testing it twice just to ensure Caroline couldn't find a single flaw to scream at me about. Then came Friday afternoon. The house smelled incredibly rich, filled with the aroma of roasting herbs, butter, and baking pastry. The dining room table was set with crystal glasses and polished silver. Caroline was upstairs getting a professional blowout and makeup application from a mobile stylist she hired. Harper was lounging in the living room, taking selfies in a stunning $900 emerald green silk dress Tobias had bought her specifically for the occasion. At 5 p.m., an hour before the guests were slated to arrive, Caroline floated into the kitchen. She looked perfect, dressed in a sophisticated navy blue gown. She handed me a plastic shopping bag. "What's this?" I asked, wiping flour off my forehead. "Your outfit for tonight," she said smoothly. I opened the bag. Inside was a cheap, stiff black dress with a high collar, completely untailored. Beneath it was a crisp, white, tie-back serving apron. It wasn't just a kitchen apron to keep my clothes clean. It was a literal uniform. A maid's uniform. I stared at it, the blood rushing to my ears. "You're joking. I'm not wearing this." "You absolutely are," Caroline smiled, pouring herself a glass of sparkling water. Tobias and I agreed. "We can't have you walking around in your usual rags, serving food to international executives. It's unprofessional." "I am your husband's daughter," I argued, my voice shaking with a mix of exhaustion and absolute humiliation. "I am not the hired help. You want me to play the maid while you take credit for the food I've spent 3 days cooking?" "You are the hired help, Natalie," Tobias's voice boomed from the doorway. He was fully dressed in his best charcoal suit, his watch gleaming under the kitchen lights. He walked over to me, his expression devoid of any paternal warmth. "You pay your rent through labor. Tonight, you are serving. You will wear the uniform, you will keep the wine glasses full, and you will clear the plates quickly and quietly. You will not speak to the guests unless they speak to you. You will stay in the kitchen." He stepped closer, towering over me. "This night determines my future. I will not have my ungrateful, stubborn daughter embarrass me in front of the VP. Don't ruin this for us." Tears pricked my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I grabbed the bag, marched to the tiny downstairs half-bathroom, and changed. The dress was itchy and humiliatingly subservient. Tying the white apron around my waist felt like locking a collar around my own neck. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the honors student, the survivor, or Valerie's daughter. I just saw a prop in Tobias's pathetic narcissistic stage play. By 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. From the kitchen, I could hear the booming, jovial voices of Tobias's colleagues. I heard Caroline laughing, a high-pitched practice sound, as she accepted compliments on the house and the incredible smell coming from the kitchen. "Oh, it's just a little something I threw together," I heard Caroline lie flawlessly. "I adore cooking for Tobias. It's my passion." I gripped the edge of the granite counter, knuckles white, taking deep breaths to steady myself. 6 months, I chanted in my head. Just 6 more months. At 6:30 p.m., the final guest arrived, the global VP, the woman who held Tobias's entire career in the palm of her hand. "Mrs. Carmichael! What an absolute honor," I heard Tobias practically sing from the foyer. "Welcome to our home. Please, come in, come in." "Thank you, Tobias," a crisp, elegant British voice replied. It was a voice that commanded immediate respect. "Your home is lovely." "Let me introduce my wife, Caroline, and our daughter, Harper," Tobias said proudly. I was at the kitchen island, loading a silver tray with crystal flutes of expensive champagne to serve as the welcome drink. My hands were shaking slightly. I took a deep breath, picked up the heavy tray, and pushed open the swinging door that led from the kitchen to the main foyer. "And here is some champagne to start the evening," Tobias announced as I walked out, not even looking at me. He was too busy beaming at the VP. I kept my eyes pinned to the tray, walking carefully into the grand entryway. "Champagne, ma'am?" I asked quietly, extending the tray toward the guest of honor. I finally looked up. The woman standing in the doorway was striking. She wore a tailored cream-colored suit, her silver-streaked hair cut into a sharp bob. She was exuding wealth, power, and European sophistication. She reached out to take a glass from my tray, a polite smile on her face. But as her eyes moved from the champagne glass up to my face, her hand stopped midair. Her polite smile vanished entirely. The color drained from her perfectly powdered face, leaving her looking like she had just seen a ghost. Her sharp, intelligent eyes widened, darting across my face, taking in my green eyes, my jawline, the specific curl of my dark hair. Then, her eyes flicked down to the cheap black dress and the crisp white maid's apron I was wearing. The air in the room seemed to evaporate. Complete suffocating silence fell over the foyer. Tobias's sycophantic smile faltered as he noticed the VP staring at his servant with an expression of absolute unbridled shock. "Mrs. Carmichael?" Tobias asked nervously, stepping forward. "Is everything all right?" Amelia Carmichael didn't look at Tobias. She didn't look at Caroline or Harper. She kept her eyes locked dead on me. I didn't know this woman. I had never seen her before in my life. But the way she was looking at me, it was with a mixture of profound recognition, heartbreak, and a rapidly boiling, terrifying fury. "Who?" Mrs. Carmichael started, her voice suddenly trembling, dropping her professional British composure entirely. Her voice slipped, revealing a distinctly American accent buried beneath years of living abroad. "Who is this girl?" Tobias chuckled nervously, waving a dismissive hand at me. "Oh, that's just Natalie. She helps out around the house. Please, ignore her. Let's go to the parlor." "I asked you a question, Tobias," Amelia snapped, her voice cracking like a whip. The sheer authority in her tone made Tobias physically recoil. She took a step closer to me, her eyes filling with tears. "Is her name Natalie?" "Natalie." "Valerie's daughter?" My breath hitched. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it would break the tray. Valerie. Nobody in this house had spoken my mother's name in 4 years. "How do you know my mother?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Amelia Carmichael reached out, her trembling hand gently touching my cheek. A single tear escaped her eye and rolled down her face. "Because, my darling," she whispered back, her eyes burning with an emotion I couldn't name, "I'm Valerie's older sister. I'm your Aunt Amelia." And then, she slowly turned her head to look at Tobias. The heartbreak in her eyes vanished, replaced instantly by the cold, calculating wrath of an executive about to destroy a man's entire life. The silence in the foyer was so absolute. so suffocating that I could hear the faint ticking of Tobias's expensive Rolex watch. Amelia Carmichael, the global VP, the woman who held my father's entire professional existence in her perfectly manicured hands, turned her gaze from me to Tobias. The transformation in her demeanor was terrifying. She went from a heartbroken, emotional aunt to an apex predator in a tailored cream suit in the span of 3 seconds. "Emilia," Tobias stammered, the color completely draining from his usually tanned, confident face. He took a hesitant step forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Emilia, there is a massive misunderstanding here. I can explain everything. Natalie she enjoys helping out. She insisted on wearing the uniform to be professional for you." Amelia didn't just look at him, she looked through him. "You, lying, pathetic coward," she said, her voice dropping to a low, lethal octave that echoed off the marble floors. Caroline, completely failing to read the room, stepped forward with her practiced high society smile. "Mrs. Carmichael, please, let's not let a little family drama ruin the evening. The beef Wellington is nearly ready, and I have a wonderful Bordeaux breathing in the dining room." "Do not speak to me," Amelia snapped, her eyes flashing with such raw disdain that Caroline physically recoiled, her mouth snapping shut. Amelia turned back to Tobias. 2 years ago, Tobias, when I took over the European division, I explicitly asked you about Valerie's daughter. I reached out. Do you remember what you told me?" Tobias opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish suffocating on dry land. Amelia didn't wait for his answer. She stepped closer to him, backing him metaphorically against the wall. "You told me that she was studying abroad in Paris. You told me that she had received a massive inheritance from your private trust, that she was living comfortably, and that she wanted absolutely nothing to do with her mother's family because she blamed us for Valerie's stress. You told me she requested 0 contact." My jaw practically hit the floor. "He told you what?" I choked out, the champagne tray trembling in my hands. Amelia looked at me, her expression softening for a fraction of a second. "He sent me letters, Natalie. Typed letters, young. Typed letters, supposedly signed by you, threatening legal action if I tried to contact you. I was living in London, dealing with my own husband's terminal illness at the time. I believed him. I believed you hated me." The magnitude of Tobias's deception crashed over me like a physical blow. When my mother died, she had begged me to find her sister, Amelia, who had moved to the UK years prior. But Tobias had told me Amelia was dead. He had fabricated a story about a car accident in Scotland to ensure I had absolutely nowhere to turn, forcing me into his basement, trapping me in a cycle of indentured servitude so he could control the narrative and keep his money untouched. "You forged my signature," I whispered, turning to stare at the man who shared my DNA. "You told me she was dead. You told her I was in Paris." Tobias was sweating profusely now. The other executives in the foyer, 3 men in dark suits who had been looking forward to a free meal, were standing frozen in awkward, horrified silence, witnessing the spectacular self-destruction of their colleague. "Amelia, listen to me," Tobias begged, his voice cracking with desperation. He reached out to touch her arm. "It was complicated. Valerie left her with debts." "Do not touch me," Amelia hissed, stepping back. She looked at the cheap black polyester dress I was wearing, the crisp white apron that felt like a choke chain around my neck. "I find my niece my own flesh and blood, a brilliant, beautiful girl living in your house, acting as your unpaid maid, serving cheap champagne to your colleagues so you can secure a promotion." "She pays rent!" Harper suddenly chimed in from the living room archway, her voice shrill and defensive. She was clutching her $900 silk dress, glaring at me. "She lives here for free. She has to earn her keep." Amelia slowly turned her head to look at Harper, then at Caroline, taking in their expensive clothes, the professional blowouts, the unmistakable stench of unearned privilege. "Earn her keep," Amelia repeated softly, the words dripping with venom. "While you stand there in a designer gown, wearing jewels bought with the salary this company pays your father, a salary I authorize." Amelia turned her back on Tobias entirely. She walked over to me and gently took the heavy silver tray from my hands. She set it down on a nearby console table with a loud, definitive clack. "Take that ridiculous apron off, Natalie. she commanded gently. I didn't hesitate. My fingers flew to the strings at my waist. I yanked the knot loose and let the crisp white apron fall to the marble floor, stepping over it. Go downstairs, Amelia said. Pack a bag. Only what you need for tonight. You are leaving with me. My driver is waiting outside. Amelia, you can't do this, Tobias shouted, his panic finally breaking through his shock. She's my daughter. This is my house. You can't just take her. Amelia turned back to him, and I saw the true, ruthless executive she was. Tobias, as of this exact moment, you are suspended, pending a full forensic investigation into your department's finances, your travel expenses, and your personal conduct. I will be bringing in Harrison Cole, the most ruthless corporate auditor in Manhattan, to comb through every single file you have touched in the last decade. If you have stolen so much as a paperclip, I will personally see to it that you are federally prosecuted. You can't suspend me over a family dispute, Tobias yelled, his face turning a mottled purple. This is a personal matter. It has nothing to do with the firm. Forgery, fraud, and severe character deficits have everything to do with the firm, Amelia replied calmly, buttoning her suit jacket. She looked at the three stunned executives standing near the door. Gentlemen, the dinner is canceled. I suggest you leave. Now, the three men didn't say a word. They nodded at Amelia, completely ignoring Tobias, and practically sprinted out the front door, eager to distance themselves from a sinking ship. I ran down the basement stairs. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely zip my duffel bag. I threw in my laptop, my college textbooks, a few pairs of jeans, and the only picture I had of my mother. When I came back upstairs, the foyer was eerily quiet. Tobias was sitting on the bottom step of the grand staircase, his head in his hands, staring blankly at the floor. Caroline was standing near the dining room, weeping hysterically into a napkin, realizing her lavish lifestyle was evaporating before her eyes. Harper was frozen in the corner, staring at Amelia with wide, terrified eyes. Ready? Amelia asked me. Yes, I breathed, feeling 50 pounds lighter. As we walked toward the door, Tobias looked up. Natalie, please, don't do this. I'm your father. Don't ruin this for me. I stopped in the doorway, the cool autumn air rushing in from the outside. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw a small, pathetic, terrified man who had built a kingdom on lies. I didn't ruin anything, Tobias, I said, my voice steady and cold. You cooked this all by yourself. Bon appetit. The fallout was biblical. Amelia didn't just take me to a hotel that night. She took me to her sprawling penthouse in the city, ordered a ridiculous amount of Thai takeout, and we spent the entire night talking, crying, and piecing together the broken timeline of the last 4 years. She explained how my mother, Valerie, had reached out to her when the cancer returned, trying to mend their old estrangement. Amelia had wanted to fly to Chicago immediately, but Tobias had intercepted the communications, telling Amelia that Valerie refused to see her. Amelia was not a woman who made idle threats. By Monday morning, a team of ruthless corporate auditors, led by the terrifyingly meticulous Harrison Cole, descended on Tobias's division. What they found was far worse than anyone anticipated. Tobias hadn't just been a terrible father, he was a remarkably sloppy embezzler. In his desperation to maintain the lifestyle, Caroline demanded the country club memberships, the designer clothes, Harper's luxury cars. Tobias had been systematically misappropriating company funds for 3 years. He had funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars through fake vendor invoices to cover his personal expenses. Amelia ensured he was terminated with extreme prejudice. He lost his job, his unvested stock options, and his entire severance package. The company filed formal charges, and Tobias was indicted on multiple counts of corporate fraud. The moment the money stopped flowing, Caroline's devotion evaporated. Less than a month after Tobias was fired, Caroline filed for divorce. She tried to take half of everything, only to discover that everything was mostly debt. The sprawling 5-bedroom suburban house was heavily mortgaged, and the bank foreclosed on it before the winter was over. Tobias ended up moving into a cheap 1-bedroom apartment near the airport, spending his remaining pennies on defense attorneys trying to keep him out of federal prison. He called me twice. I let it go to voicemail both times. Harper, the golden child who had never worked a day in her life, was suddenly faced with a harsh reality. With Tobias broke and Caroline frantically trying to find another rich man to leech onto, Harper had to drop out of her expensive private university. The last I heard, she was working double shifts folding sweaters at a fast fashion retail store in a dying mall, complaining to anyone who would listen about how unfair her life was. As for me, karma delivered the most beautiful harvest. Living with Amelia changed my entire trajectory. For the first time since my mother died, I didn't have to worry about how I was going to afford my next meal, let alone my tuition. Amelia paid off my remaining college balance and told me my only job was to focus on my education. "You are Valerie's legacy," Amelia told me one evening as we sat on her balcony overlooking the skyline. "You have her fire, Natalie. Don't let anyone ever extinguish it again." I threw myself into my studies. 6 months later, I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, graduating summa cum laude. Amelia was in the front row, cheering so loudly she practically lost her voice. I didn't stop there. Inspired by the brutal efficiency of Harrison Cole and the absolute power of knowing the law, I applied to law school. I wanted to be the person who stepped in when people like Tobias tried to abuse their power. I wanted to be the advocate my mother never had. Today, 5 years after that fateful dinner party, I am an associate at a top-tier corporate litigation firm in New York. I wear tailored suits that I buy with my own hard-earned money. I never step foot in a kitchen unless I absolutely want to. Occasionally, I think back to that Friday night. I think about the heavy silver tray, the itchy black polyester dress, and the smell of the beef Wellington I had meticulously prepared. I think about Tobias looking at me, demanding I play the servant so he could secure his throne. He had wanted the perfect dinner party to showcase his perfect life. Instead, he served up his own spectacular destruction on a silver platter. And honestly, it was the best meal I've ever had. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you found yourself rooting for karma and justice today, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that the truth always comes out, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible real-life stories. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Stay strong and never let anyone dim your light.